I heard the wire cutters at exactly 10:47 p.m. That metallic click cut through the September night like a gunshot, sharp and unmistakable, the kind of sound you can't unhear once you know what it means. The lights died 3 seconds later. My hand froze over my biology textbook. Darkness swallowed the cabin whole, leaving only the pale glow of my laptop screen illuminating Blaze's amber eyes across the room. He'd already lifted his head from his favorite rug, 70 pounds of red wolf muscle coiled tight, hackles rising along his spine. "Quiet," I whispered, though I knew the command was unnecessary. Blaze understood danger better than most people. Footsteps creaked on the porch below. Not one set, 3, maybe 4. Heavy boots trying to move silently across century-old wood that betrayed every step. The hospital had called 2 hours ago. Grandpa Henry had 48 hours left, maybe less. I had to survive the night to say goodbye. I had no idea that 3 men were already inside. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. My name is Sarah Elizabeth Morgan, but everyone calls me Beth. 17 years old, alone in a cabin 20 miles from the nearest town, with nothing but a wolf-dog hybrid and memories of people who aren't coming back. 18 months ago, my parents died on Route 211 just outside Sperryville. Dr. Robert Morgan and Dr. Jennifer Morgan, wildlife biologists who'd spent 15 years studying red wolf recovery in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A drunk driver crossed the center line at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Both killed instantly, the state trooper told me. Like that made it better. Like instant meant painless. I was 15. I became an orphan before I understood what the word really meant. Grandpa Henry moved in 3 days after the funeral. Henry Morgan, 68 years old, retired park ranger with hands like leather and a voice that could gentle a spooked horse. He'd raised my father in these same mountains, taught him to read animal tracks before he could read books, showed him that wilderness wasn't something to fear but something to respect. For a year we built a life together. He taught me what my parents hadn't had time to finish teaching: how to identify scat, how to move through forest without disturbing it, how to understand that every creature has a language if you're patient enough to learn it. Then, 6 months ago, the coughing started. Wouldn't stop, wouldn't ease, turned his handkerchiefs red. Lung cancer, the doctors at UVA hospital said. Aggressive. Stage 4. Maybe a year if the treatment worked. Maybe 6 months if it didn't. He'd been in Charlottesville for 3 weeks now, 4 hours away by car, getting chemotherapy that cost $12,000 a month. Our insurance covered some. Not enough. Medical debt already stood at $47,000, climbing every day like floodwater we couldn't sandbag against. I'd dropped out of Ashford High School, switched to online courses so I could work the cabin, maintain the research equipment, keep the wolf sanctuary my parents had built from falling into disrepair. 17 years old, doing college-level biology homework between feeding schedules and equipment maintenance, existing in a bubble of isolation that felt like drowning in slow motion. The $6,200 hidden in my father's study was every penny we had left in the world. Enough for maybe 2 more months of Grandpa's treatment. Maybe 3 if we ate less. Blaze came into my life 3 years ago, back when I still believed the world made sense. I was 14, helping my parents track wildlife patterns near Skyline Drive, when I heard the whimpering. Soft at first, then desperate. The kind of sound that bypasses your brain and hits straight in your chest. The trap was old, rusted, illegal as hell. The kind poachers set and forget, leaving animals to die slowly over days. A 6-week-old wolf pup, tiny enough to fit in my jacket, his right front paw mangled in steel jaws that had probably been there since before he was born. Around him lay his family. Mother Wolf, 3 siblings, all shot. Fresh kills, maybe 12 hours old. The hunters had massacred the pack and never bothered to check their traps. I'd never seen my father cry before that day. He knelt in the bloody leaves, this big man who'd stared down black bears without flinching, and he wept while my mother carefully worked the trap open. The pup's fur was reddish-brown, like autumn leaves backlit by sunset. When Mom finally freed him, he didn't try to run, just looked at me with amber eyes too old for his small body, and something inside my chest cracked open. "Blaze," I whispered. "Your name is Blaze." We drove him straight to the emergency vet in Harrisonburg. Dr. Sarah Chen saved the paw, barely, but said he'd never survive in the wild with that limp. My parents made calls. Fish and Wildlife, the Red Wolf Recovery Program, conservation groups up and down the eastern seaboard. The DNA test came back a week later. 78% red wolf, 22% Alaskan Malamute. A hybrid. Rare enough to be valuable, wild enough to be dangerous, and young enough that maybe, just maybe, he could learn to live between two worlds. Mom and Dad pulled strings I didn't know existed. Special permits, conservation research exemptions, letters from every wildlife organization they'd ever worked with. The state agreed to let us keep him under strict conditions, contained environment, regular inspections, any sign of aggression, and he'd be euthanized immediately. For 3 years, Blaze never showed an ounce of aggression toward humans. Not once. But Ashford didn't see a conservation success story. They saw a wolf. Mrs. Patterson claimed he killed her chickens last spring. He hadn't. I proved it with security footage showing a fox. But I still paid her $200. I didn't have to keep the peace. The Hendersons insisted he stalk their daughter on her morning jog. Their daughter was jogging through our property, a fact they conveniently forgot. Sheriff Thompson came out twice, walked our fence line, checked Blaze's enclosure, found nothing wrong. But he'd warned me the last time, voice gentle but firm. "One more complaint, Beth. Just one, and I can't help you. State wildlife doesn't mess around with predators this close to residential areas. They'll come with tranquilizer guns, and sweetheart, that won't be a rescue mission." I understood what he meant. Blaze existed in a space that terrified bureaucrats, too wild for suburbs, too bonded to humans for wilderness. One wrong move, one perceived threat, and the state would eliminate the problem. So I kept him close, built him a beautiful enclosure with natural obstacles and a creek, but kept the gate open most of the time. He could leave whenever he wanted, run into the mountains, find whatever remained of the red wolf population, live free. He never did. Every morning I'd wake to find him on the rug beside my bed, those amber eyes watching me with something that looked like love. When I walked the property, he shadowed me. When I studied, he dozed nearby. When I cried, and God, I'd cried so much this year, he'd rest his head on my lap and just be there. The wilderness people said you couldn't domesticate a wolf. The dog people said he'd never be safe. My parents had laughed at both camps. "He's not domesticated," Dad used to say, "and he's not wild. He's Blaze. He makes his own category." Mom would add, smiling, "Some bonds don't fit in boxes, Beth. Don't let anyone tell you love has to look a certain way." Now they were gone. Grandpa was dying 4 hours away, and Blaze was the only family I had left, the only family someone wanted to take. Because downstairs, moving through my house with deliberate footsteps, were men who'd come for something. Money, probably. Maybe the research equipment. Possibly just whatever they could carry. They had no idea what they'd really found. A girl with nothing left to lose. And a wolf who'd die before letting anyone hurt her. I didn't panic. Grandpa Henry had drilled that into me since I was 15 years old, standing over my parents' graves while autumn rain turned the cemetery to mud. "In a crisis, Beth, your body wants to run or freeze," he'd said, his weathered hand steady on my shoulder. That's when most people die. Not from the danger itself, but from panic. Slow down, assess, then act. So I slowed down. 3 distinct voices downstairs, male, trying for quiet, but failing against the century-old floorboards that telegraphed every step. The kitchen window. I'd heard glass break, subtle but unmistakable. They were already inside when they cut the power and phone lines. My laptop screen cast Blaze's shadow huge against the bedroom wall. He stood now, 70 pounds of coiled muscle, every sense locked on the sounds below. His ears swiveled independently, tracking movement, lips pulled back just enough to show the edge of canines. Not aggressive yet. Waiting for my signal. "Stay," I whispered, touching his neck. His fur was standing on end, electricity I could feel through my fingertips. I had maybe 3 minutes before they searched upstairs. 3 minutes to make a choice that would determine whether either of us survived the night. Option 1. Hide. Lock the bedroom door, push the dresser against it, pray they took what they wanted and left. Coward's choice. They'd already cut communications, they weren't planning to leave witnesses. Option 2. Run. The window led to the porch roof, 12-foot drop to the ground, then 20 miles of mountain forest between here and help. With Blaze, maybe we'd make it. Maybe we'd die of exposure. Maybe the men had a vehicle and would hunt us down before we made 2 miles. Option 3. Go downstairs. Face them. Use the only advantage I had. They thought I was alone and helpless. They had no idea about Blaze. I grabbed the baseball bat from behind my door. Ash wood, 34 inches, the one Dad had used in college. Not much against guns if they had them, but better than nothing. Grandpa's voice echoed in my memory. "A weapon you're afraid to use is worse than no weapon at all. If you pick it up, you'd better mean it." I meant it. Blaze, with me, silent. He moved to my side instantly, soundless as smoke. 3 years of training, hundreds of hours teaching him commands, building the kind of communication that went deeper than words. My parents had worked with wolves long enough to know you couldn't dominate them like dogs. You built partnership, trust, a language of mutual respect. I opened the bedroom door. The hallway stretched dark before me, stairs descending into deeper darkness where flashlight beams cut erratic patterns through my parents' living room. "Supposed to be easy, you said. Old man's in the hospital, girl's alone. Shut up and keep looking." Insurance payout from the parents' death, conservation grants, has to be somewhere. What about the wolf? Intel said she's got a wolf. My heart stopped. They knew about Blaze. This wasn't random. Someone had told them about my family, about Grandpa being gone, about the money we didn't have, about Blaze. Someone had planned this. I descended 3 steps, enough to see into the living room. 3 men, just as I'd counted. One older, maybe mid-40s, graying hair, and the controlled movements of someone who'd done this before. One younger, late 20s, twitchy and sweating despite the cool night. The fidgeting screamed drugs, probably meth given the area. The third stood apart, military bearing, uncomfortable with the whole situation. The older one was giving orders. The tweaker was trashing my parents' research, scattering journals and specimen logs like garbage. The military guy was watching the stairs. He saw me first. "Tommy," he said, voice tight. "We got company." 3 flashlights swung to pin me in their beams. I stood frozen on the stairs, bat in one hand, the other touching Blaze's neck beside me. He'd gone absolutely still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence in nature documentaries. "Well, shit," the tweaker said. "She's supposed to be asleep." "Plans changed, Derek," Tommy replied, his voice calm. Too calm. He studied me like I was a specimen, then his gaze dropped to Blaze. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. And beneath it, something darker. hate. "That's not a dog," Tommy said softly. "No," I agreed, keeping my voice level despite my hammering heart. "He's not." "You know who I am?" Tommy asked. I shook my head. "Thomas Blackwood. 8 years ago, my son Michael was killed in these mountains, 6 years old, attacked by wild dogs while on a school camping trip." The name clicked. I remembered my parents talking about it, the tragedy that had sparked renewed calls to eliminate predators from the park, the investigation that had found nothing conclusive. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, meaning it. "Sorry." Tommy's laugh held no humor. "You're standing there with a goddamn wolf in your house and you're sorry. You people and your conservation projects, your research, your protected species, while children die." "Blaze has never hurt anyone." "Yet," Derek interrupted, pulling a gun from his waistband. "How much you think a wolf's worth on the exotic animal market, Tommy? 50 grand? More?" Everything stopped. The gun, the greed in Derek's eyes, the calculation in Tommy's expression, and Blaze waiting beside me for permission to do what every instinct was screaming. I had come downstairs to face them. I had no idea I'd just walked us both into a trap. "Put the gun away, Derek," the military guy said, his voice tight with tension. "This wasn't the plan." "Plans change, Ray," Derek snapped back, but his hand was shaking. The gun wavered between me and Blaze, and I understood with cold clarity that this man was more dangerous because he was unstable, not despite it. "Show us where the money is," Tommy said, his tone almost reasonable, almost kind, the way you'd talk to a frightened animal. "We know about the insurance payout, your parents' death benefit, the conservation grants. Just tell us where it is, and we'll leave." "There is no money," I said, and it was the truth. My parents were researchers. They lived on grant funding that barely covered expenses. The insurance payout went into a trust I can't access until I'm 21. "Lying little—" Derek started forward. Blaze's growl stopped him cold. It wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. It was the sound of a predator announcing boundaries, the kind of warning that bypassed rational thought and hit straight into the primitive brain. Every human in that room felt it in their spine. Derek's gun hand steadied, pointed directly at Blaze's head. "No!" I dropped the bat, threw myself between them. "Don't! Please don't!" "Then call him off," Tommy said quietly. "He's not attacking anyone, he's just—" I struggled for words. "He's protecting me. That's what he does." "That's what they all do," Tommy replied, and the bitterness in his voice cut like glass. "Right up until they don't. Right up until a 6-year-old boy is lying in the dirt with his throat torn out." The raw pain in those words hit me harder than any threat. This wasn't just about money. This was about a father who'd lost everything and needed someone to blame. "Mr. Blackwood," I said softly, "I know about Michael. My parents talked about it. The whole community mourned." "But Blaze isn't—" "Your parents." Tommy's laugh was ugly. "Your parents and their research, reintroducing predators, making the mountains wild again. Do you know how many complaints they ignored? How many people said the wolves were getting too comfortable around humans? The investigation found no evidence wolves were involved in your son's death," I said, remembering the news reports. "The medical examiner said—" "The medical examiner found what was left after the animals were done," Tommy cut me off. "Convenient how inconclusive everything became. Convenient how your parents' research kept getting funded. Convenient how nobody wanted to admit their precious conservation project had killed a child." Ray shifted uncomfortably. "Tommy, man, we came here for money. Let's just find it and go." "50 grand for the wolf," Derek interjected, eyes gleaming. "Maybe more. I got contacts who deal in exotics. Rich people pay stupid money for animals like this." "We don't even need the other money." "You're not taking him," I said flatly. Derek's smile was cruel. "How you gonna stop us, little girl?" Blaze's muscles bunched beneath my hand. I could feel him calculating angles, distances, threat assessment. 3 years of training held him in place, but barely. The instinct to protect me was warring with the discipline to wait for my command. "Beth." A new voice, familiar, coming from the back door. "Beth, honey, are you okay?" My heart sank into my stomach. Jim Wheeler stood in the kitchen doorway, backlit by his flashlight. 71 years old, my neighbor, the man who checked on me every Thursday evening like clockwork. The closest thing I had to family besides Grandpa Henry, walking straight into hell because he'd seen my lights were out. "Jim, run!" I started to shout, but Derek moved faster. The younger man crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, gun pressed against Jim's temple before the old veteran could react. Jim's flashlight clattered to the floor. "Well, look at that," Derek said. "Insurance. Girl gives us trouble. Grandpa here pays the price." "I'm not her grandfather," Jim said calmly, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. Military training from 50 years ago, assessing the situation. "Name's James Wheeler. I live 2 miles down the mountain, just came to check on my neighbor." "Lucky you," Tommy said dryly. "Ray, secure him." Ray pulled zip ties from his pocket. They'd come prepared, and bound Jim's hands behind his back with practiced efficiency. They positioned him on the floor against the wall, gun trained on him. Jim's blue eyes met mine. He blinked once, long, then 3 short, then long again. Morse code. S, then more blinks. O, S. He'd called for help before coming inside. Hope flared in my chest, quickly dampened by reality. Sheriff Thompson was 40 minutes away on a good day. On a Thursday night with budget cuts, he might be the only deputy on duty. Even if he'd received Jim's call, even if he was already driving, we had maybe 20 minutes before help arrived. 20 minutes was forever when guns were involved. "All right," Tommy said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Here's how this works. You're going to take us through this house room by room. You're going to show us every hiding place, every safe, every location where your parents might have stashed money or valuables. The wolf stays with you because if we separate you two, he'll probably attack. But if he makes one aggressive move, Derek puts a bullet in your neighbor. Understand?" I understood. They turned Jim into leverage. "And if I cooperate?" I asked. "Then maybe everyone lives through this," Tommy replied. But his eyes said he was lying. We started in the living room. I showed them the obvious places: the desk drawer with $200 in emergency cash, the bookshelf with my mother's small jewelry box containing sentimental pieces worth maybe a few $100s total. Derek grabbed both, shoving them into a backpack. "This is garbage," he snarled. "Where's the real money?" "There is no real money," I repeated. "We're barely surviving. My grandfather's cancer treatment costs $12,000 a month. Do you think I'd be living like this if I had access to hundreds of thousands of dollars?" But they weren't listening. Derek was sweating more now, his movements increasingly jerky. Withdrawal, I realized. Whatever drugs he was on, he needed another dose soon. That made him more dangerous, more unpredictable. We moved through the kitchen, the bathroom, my parents' bedroom. Each room yielded small amounts, $50 here, some silver coins there, nothing that would satisfy them. Blaze stayed pressed against my leg the entire time, a warm, solid presence. I kept my hand on his neck, feeling his heartbeat, steady and strong. He was waiting, patient, as only a predator could be patient. In my grandfather's room, Tommy found the VA benefits paperwork. His eyes scanned the documents. "Henry Morgan," he read aloud. "Decorated park ranger, Vietnam veteran, Cancer patient. He looked at me. Where is he now? UVA hospital, I said quietly. Charlottesville. When's he coming back? The truth stuck in my throat. The call from the hospital 2 hours ago, the nurse's gentle voice. Your grandfather's condition has deteriorated. If you want to say goodbye, you should come soon. We're thinking 24 to 48 hours. He's not, I finally said. He's dying. Something flickered across Tommy's face. Sympathy, maybe, or just recognition of shared loss. But Derek's response was pure calculation. So nobody's coming to check on her. No rescue. We got time. We should go, Ray said again, more urgently. Tommy, we've searched everywhere. There's nothing here worth the risk. Let's just take what we got and leave. Not without the wolf, Derek insisted. That animal's worth more than everything else combined. You can't sell him, I said desperately. Red wolves are protected, endangered. Anyone you try to sell him to will know he's stolen. They'll trace him back to you. Not if there's no record he existed, Derek replied, and his smile made my blood run cold. No witnesses, no problem. The implication hung in the air like poison. They were going to kill us. All of us. Me, Jim, probably Blaze too, once they realized he couldn't be sold. They'd come here for money, found barely anything. And now the only way to avoid consequences was to eliminate everyone who could identify them. Ray saw it too. No, he said firmly. No way. I signed up for robbery, not murder. You signed up for whatever Tommy says, Derek shot back. Or did you forget who pulled your ass out of that VA hospital? Who gave you purpose when you were swallowing pills and planning your exit? Ray's face went pale. Tommy was silent, but I could see him weighing options. Practical. Cold. Calculating the math of murder versus the risk of witnesses. There's another option, I said quickly. My mind raced, grasping for anything that might buy time. My father's study, we haven't searched there yet. That's where he kept important documents. If there's anything of value in this house, it would be there. It was a gamble. The study did contain the last of our money, $6,200 in a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf. But it also contained something else. My father's research documentation, evidence of everything my parents had worked on, including possibly information that could help me survive this. Tommy studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Show us. As we walked toward the study, past family photos on the walls, my parents smiling, young and alive, with wolves in the background, I felt time compressing. Help was coming, maybe, but not soon enough. I had one room left to search, one last chance to change the equation. And Blaze, pressed against my leg, waiting for the moment when waiting would no longer be enough. My father's study smelled like pipe tobacco and old books, even 18 months after his death. The scent hit me as I opened the door, and for a moment I was 14 again, doing homework at his desk while he cataloged wolf scat samples and Mom analyzed GPS tracking data from their radio collars. Start looking, Tommy ordered, his flashlight beam sweeping across floor-to-ceiling bookshelves packed with research journals, field guides, and academic texts on carnivore behavior. Derek immediately started pulling books down, shaking them to see if anything fell out. Pages scattered across the floor. First editions, signed copies, my mother's careful margin notes about population dynamics and territory ranges. I watched him destroy in seconds what had taken my parents decades to collect. Careful with those, I said, voice tight. Some of them are worth what? Derek sneered. Worth more than 50 grand for a wolf? I doubt it. But Tommy had stopped listening to Derek. He was examining the walls, running his hands along the panels behind the bookshelves, looking for inconsistencies. Professional, methodical. This wasn't his first robbery. My heart sank as his fingers found the edge of the hidden compartment. Well, well, he murmured, applying pressure to what looked like innocent trim work. The panel clicked and swung open with a soft sound that might as well have been a gunshot. Inside, a space about the size of a shoebox, documents, a small wooden box, and rubber-banded stacks of cash. Derek whooped. "Finally! I told you there was money!" Tommy began removing items carefully. Birth certificates first. Mine, my parents', insurance policies, the property deed to the cabin and surrounding 200 acres. Then the wooden box, which he opened to reveal my grandmother's engagement ring, my mother's modest pearl necklace, and a few other pieces of family jewelry. Not expensive, not even particularly valuable to anyone but me. Finally, the cash. He counted it methodically while Derek practically vibrated with anticipation. $6,200, Tommy announced. The number hung in the air. "That's it?" Derek's voice climbed toward hysteria. $6,000? Where's the rest? Where's the insurance money?" "I told you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's in a trust. I can't access it until I'm 21. That's 3 more weeks away, but the legal paperwork takes months to—" Derek grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You're lying. Rich kids always lie about their money." Blaze exploded into motion. 70 pounds of Red Wolf hit Derek in the chest before any of us could blink. The gun went flying, skittering across the wooden floor. Derek screamed, pure terror, the sound of someone who'd just discovered what real predators felt like. As Blaze's jaws closed around his forearm, not crushing, not yet. A controlled bite, the way wolves disciplined pack members, pressure, pain, warning. But Derek's meth-fueled panic made it worse. He thrashed, and Blaze's teeth sank deeper. "Blaze, stop!" I shouted. The wolf released immediately, backing away to my side. His muzzle was bloody, Derek's blood, not his own, and his amber eyes were locked on the threat. Derek curled on the floor, clutching his mangled arm, sobbing. "It attacked me! The fucking thing attacked me!" "You grabbed her," Ray said quietly from the doorway, and I heard something new in his voice. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "What did you think would happen?" Tommy had retrieved Derek's gun. Now he held 2 weapons, his own and Derek's, and the balance of power had shifted completely. His face had gone pale, and I saw him looking at Blaze with new understanding. "That's not a pet," Tommy said softly. "That's not even a hybrid. That's a predator." "He's defending me," I replied. "He's never attacked anyone who wasn't threatening me. That's not aggression. That's protection." "Same thing killed my son," Tommy said, but his voice shook. "No," I said firmly. "Whatever killed Michael, it wasn't wolves. The investigation was inconclusive. The medical examiner couldn't determine, because there wasn't enough left to examine." Tommy's control finally cracked. "Do you understand? My 6-year-old son went on a school camping trip, a supervised, supposedly safe trip to these mountains, and he wandered away from camp for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. When they found him," his voice broke. There was barely enough for a closed casket. The raw agony in those words cut through my fear. This man wasn't evil. He was broken, shattered by grief and looking for something, anything, to make sense of senseless loss. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I'm so sorry. No parent should ever—" My throat closed around the words. I thought of my own parents, gone in an instant on Route 211, different circumstances, same absolute finality. "Sorry doesn't bring him back," Tommy said. "Sorry doesn't change the fact that we protect predators over children in this country. Sorry doesn't—" His phone rang. Everyone froze. Tommy pulled it from his pocket, looked at the screen, and his face went even paler. "It's the hospital," he said, and something in his voice made me pay attention. "My daughter, she's—" He answered. "Hello? Yes, this is Thomas Blackwood. What? When? Is she—" I watched his face crumble. "I understand. I'm 4 hours away. I'll come as soon as—" He listened, Yes, yes, I understand. Tell her I love her, tell her Daddy loves her, and I'm coming." He ended the call, stood there staring at the phone like it might offer different news if he looked long enough. "Tommy?" Ray asked carefully. "Sarah," Tommy whispered. "My daughter. She's at Virginia Commonwealth Hospital. Appendicitis. It ruptured. They're taking her into emergency surgery right now." The universe contracted to that single moment. I saw it all on Tommy's face. The calculation, the impossible choice. Stay here and finish this robbery or abandon everything to get to his daughter. Except it wasn't really a choice at all. Not for a father. "We're leaving," Tommy said. "What?" Derek struggled to sit up, still clutching his bleeding arm. "We're not done here. The wolf is worth exactly nothing if my daughter dies while I'm stealing it." Tommy cut him off. His eyes met mine, and I saw recognition there, understanding that transcended our circumstances. "You have 3 weeks until you can access that trust fund?" I nodded. "Then you'll survive 3 more weeks. We're taking the cash and jewelry. Consider it payment for Derek's medical bills." He gestured with the gun toward the door. "Ray, help Derek to the truck." "Tommy, man, we can't just—" Derek started. "We're leaving," Tommy repeated, and there was something final in his voice. "I've lost one child. I'm not losing another for $6,000 and a wolf I can't sell anyway." But as Ray moved to help Derek up, Tommy turned back to me. His expression had changed, hardened again. "The license plate," he said quietly. "What?" "In your parents' letter. You read it out loud. TBD 4729. That plate number." Cold understanding washed over me. "That's your truck." Tommy's silence was confirmation. "You killed my parents," I breathed. "It was an accident," he said, but the words sounded rehearsed, practiced. 8 years ago. I'd been drinking, shouldn't have been driving. There was a deer in the road. I swerved, clipped another car. They went off the embankment. I didn't stop. I didn't—" His voice caught. "Michael was in my truck. The impact. Internal injuries. He died 2 days later in the hospital." The room spun. "You said wild dogs killed him." "The official report says inconclusive cause of death," Tommy corrected. "Michael died from trauma sustained in a vehicle accident. But after, when they took the body to the funeral home, wild animals got into the building. Scavenged the—" He couldn't finish. "It was easier to let people believe the animals killed him. Easier than admitting I'd killed my own son by driving drunk." "And my parents?" "We're investigating the accident. They'd been called to document the animal activity at the funeral home. They found my paint transfer on their car. They knew." His jaw clenched. "I followed them that night, not to hurt them, just to talk, to explain. But they saw me following, and they sped up and—" "You killed 4 people," I said. "Your son, my parents, and you've been living with it." "Every goddamn day," Tommy replied. Jim's phone rang at 3:47 a.m. We all heard it, the shrill electronic sound cutting through the tense silence where Tommy's confession still hung like smoke. Jim, still bound on the floor against the wall, couldn't reach it. The phone kept ringing from his jacket pocket. "Answer it," Tommy said to Ray. Ray fished the phone out, looked at the screen. "UVA Hospital." Everything inside me went cold. "Speaker," Tommy ordered. Ray pressed the button. A woman's voice filled the room, professional and gentle in the way that nurses are when they deliver the worst news of your life. "Mr. Wheeler, this is Sarah Chen, night nurse at UVA Medical Center. I'm calling about Henry Morgan. Is his granddaughter Beth available?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there while my world ended for the 3rd time in 18 months. "This is Beth," I finally managed. "Beth, honey, I'm so sorry." Your grandfather passed away about 13 minutes ago at 3:34 a.m. And it was very peaceful. He went in his sleep. No pain. The floor disappeared beneath my feet. Blaze caught me, literally caught me, pressing his solid weight against my legs before I could collapse. My hand found his fur and held on like it was the only real thing left in the universe. His last words were for you, Nurse Chen continued, her voice soft. He said, "Tell Beth I love her. Tell her she did good. Tell her I'm proud." I made a sound, not words, just a broken noise that came from somewhere deeper than my lungs. "We'll need you to come in when you're able," the nurse said. "There are some papers to sign, personal effects to collect, but there's no rush. Tomorrow is fine. I'm so very sorry for your loss." The call ended. I stood in my father's study, surrounded by men who'd broken into my home, held me hostage, threatened my life. And none of it mattered. None of it touched the absolute emptiness that had opened inside my chest. Grandpa Henry was gone. The man who'd taught me to track deer by their scat, who'd shown me how to read weather in the clouds, who'd held me while I sobbed after my parents died and promised me I'd survive this, I'd survive anything because I was stronger than I knew. He'd died alone in a hospital room 4 hours away while I was here, fighting for my life against men who wanted money I didn't have. I'd never see him again, never hear his laugh, never watch him drink coffee on the porch while the sun came up over the Blue Ridge Mountains, never tell him about my day, my plans, my dreams of continuing my parents' work. He'd died thinking I was safe. He'd died without knowing I might not survive the night. "Beth," Jim said from the floor, his voice cracking. "Beth, I'm so sorry. Henry he was a good man." I looked at Jim, really looked at him for the first time since he'd walked into this nightmare. 71 years old, Vietnam veteran, widower who'd lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago, and my Thursday night visitor who'd check on the cabin, share stories about the old days, make sure I wasn't drowning in isolation, and he'd told these men about me, about Grandpa being in the hospital, about me being alone. "You did this," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "You gave them the information. You told them when to come." Jim's face crumpled. "Beth, Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know Grandpa was dying when you sent them here?" "No! God, no, I didn't." Jim's words tumbled out desperate. "Derek approached me 2 weeks ago. Said he knew I had gambling debts. Said he could make them disappear if I just gave him some information about the Morgan place. He made it sound like a simple robbery. Take some equipment, the research grants money, be in and out. I didn't know I never thought they'd hurt you. I swear I didn't know." "But you told them anyway," I said. "I owed $80,000, Jim whispered. "The casino was threatening to take my house, Helen's house, the only thing I have left of her. I was desperate and stupid, and I'm sorry, Beth. I'm so goddamn sorry." Blaze pressed harder against my legs. I could feel him trembling. Or maybe I was trembling. Everything felt disconnected, unreal, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Tommy was staring at his phone, at the message about his daughter in surgery. Derek was still on the floor, bleeding, whimpering about his arm. Ray stood frozen, gun in hand, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. And Grandpa Henry was dead. "I want you all to leave," I said. My voice came out flat, empty. "Take the money, take the jewelry. I don't care, just get out of my house." "No," Ray said. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood in the doorway, Derek's gun in his hand, and something had changed in his posture, straighter, more solid, like he'd found something he'd lost a long time ago. "We're not leaving," Ray continued. "Not like this. Not with Jim tied up and Derek bleeding and this girl," he looked at me. "Not with her thinking this is how the world works. Ray, my daughter, Tommy started. Is 4 hours away in surgery? Ray interrupted. You won't make it in time whether you leave now or in 20 minutes. But what you do in these next 20 minutes, that matters. He pulled out his phone, the one we'd all forgotten he had. I've been recording, Ray said quietly. Everything. Every word Tommy said about the accident, about following Beth's parents, about the cover-up. He looked at Tommy. 8 years, man. 8 years you've been carrying this. 8 years of lies. Tommy's face went white. You wouldn't. I already did, Ray replied. Sent the file to cloud storage 10 minutes ago. Timed upload. If I don't cancel it in, he checked his watch, 18 minutes, it automatically sends to the FBI, the Virginia State Police, and the Shenandoah County Sheriff's Department. You bastard, Tommy breathed. Maybe, Ray agreed, but I'm a bastard who's tired of being complicit. I did 3 tours in Afghanistan. You know what I learned? Every time you compromise your values to survive, you lose a piece of yourself. Eventually, there's nothing left worth saving. He looked at me again. I'm done losing pieces. Derek was crying now, rocking back and forth, clutching his mangled arm. We're all going to prison. We're all fucked. Probably, Ray said. But there's prison for robbery, and there's prison for murder. There's living with what we did tonight, and there's living with what we could have done. I'll take the first option. I couldn't process what was happening. My grandfather was dead. These men had broken into my home, threatened my life, taken the last money we had, and now one of them was, what, having a crisis of conscience? Why? I asked Ray. Why now? Because I heard Nurse Chen say your grandfather was proud of you, Ray said simply. My dad died when I was in Kabul. Heart attack. I was on patrol when it happened. By the time I got home, he'd been in the ground for 2 weeks. His voice roughened. I never got to hear his last words, never got to say goodbye. And I've spent 10 years wondering if he was proud of me or disappointed that his son became, he gestured at himself, this. Ray, we don't have time for your therapy session, Tommy said, but there was desperation in his voice now. Your grandfather died proud of you, Ray continued, ignoring Tommy. Died believing you were safe. Died thinking you were strong enough to survive anything. Was he right? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Was he right? I looked around the study. My father's books scattered across the floor. My mother's research torn apart. The hidden compartment empty. Blaze pressed against my leg, blood on his muzzle from defending me. Jim bound on the floor, betrayal written across his weathered face. Tommy, clutching his phone, torn between his daughter and his crimes. Derek spiraling into shock and withdrawal. And Ray, this stranger who'd helped invade my home, now offering me something I didn't understand yet. What do you want from me? I asked Ray. Nothing, he said. This isn't about you. This is about me deciding who I want to be. But since you asked, I want you to let me call 911. Get Derek medical attention before he bleeds out. Get the sheriff here to take our statements. Let the truth come out, all of it, including what we did tonight. You're insane, Derek moaned. We'll get 20 years. Better than life, Ray replied. Better than becoming the kind of person who'd let a 17-year-old girl die to cover our asses. Tommy was calculating. I could see it on his face, weighing options, prison versus freedom, his daughter versus his crimes, the man he'd pretended to be versus who he actually was. There's another option, Tommy said slowly. We could... No, I said. Everyone looked at me. No more options, I continued, and my voice was stronger now, clearer. No more negotiations, no more threats. Ray's right. Call 911. Tell them everything. Let this end the way it should have ended 8 years ago when you killed my parents. It was an accident, Tommy protested weakly. The crash was an accident, I agreed. The cover-up was murder. You've had 8 years to turn yourself in, 8 years to tell the truth. You chose to let my parents be buried thinking they died in a random hit and run. You chose to let me grow up not knowing who killed them. My hands were shaking, but I kept talking. My grandfather spent 18 months helping me grieve, teaching me to survive, making me strong enough to live without him. And you know what his last words were? That he was proud of me. I looked at Tommy directly. Can your daughter say that about you? When she wakes up from surgery, can you look her in the eye and tell her you're proud of who you've become? Tommy's face crumpled. The gun dropped from his hand, clattered on the floor. He sank into my father's desk chair and put his head in his hands. No, he whispered. God help me, no. Ray pulled out his phone and dialed 911. This is Raymond Sullivan, he said when the operator answered. I'm calling to report a home invasion at 4847 Skyline Trail, Blue Ridge Mountains. 3 perpetrators, including myself. 1 injured, needs immediate medical attention. 1 hostage situation resolved. No current active threat. He paused. And I'm also calling to report a vehicular homicide from 8 years ago. The driver is here and willing to confess. I listened to Ray give details to the dispatcher. Heard him describe our location, Derek's injuries, the need for both ambulance and police. Heard him stay calm, professional, like this was just another mission and he'd finally figured out which side he was supposed to be on. Jim was crying silently on the floor. Beth, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I walked over to him. Blaze followed, pressed against my leg. I looked down at this man who'd been part of my life for 3 years, who'd checked on me every Thursday, who told me stories about my grandfather's younger days, who'd betrayed me for money. I know, I said, and I did know. I understood desperation, understood making terrible choices when you felt like you had no options, understood being broken by loss and grief until you couldn't see straight anymore. But understanding wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever. Outside, I heard the first siren in the distance. 3 months later, I stood on the front porch of the cabin and watched autumn paint the Blue Ridge Mountains in colors my parents used to photograph every year. Gold and crimson and rust, the leaves turning just like they always had, indifferent to human grief. Blaze lay at my feet, chin resting on his paws, watching the forest with those amber eyes that never missed anything. He was bigger now, almost 80 pounds, filled out with the muscle that came from running these mountains every day. The limp from his old trap injury barely showed anymore. Sheriff Thompson's cruiser was parked in the driveway. He sat in one of the rocking chairs my grandfather had built, holding a coffee mug I'd given him, reading through paperwork that would change everything. It's all approved, he said, looking up. Commonwealth of Virginia officially designates Blaze as an ambassador animal for the Red Wolf Recovery Program. No more complaints, no more threats of seizure. He's legal, Beth. Completely legal. I let out a breath I'd been holding for 3 months. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Dr. Martinez at Virginia Tech. Her testimony about Blaze's temperament and conservation value, that's what convinced the board. He set down the papers. How are you doing? Really doing? The question was harder to answer than it should have been. The night of the break-in had ended with ambulances and police cars turning our quiet mountain road into a light show. Derek had been taken to the hospital under guard, surgery to repair the damage Blaze had done to his arm. Tommy had confessed everything. The drunk driving accident 8 years ago, his son's death, following my parents, the crash that killed them. Ray had surrendered peacefully, his recorded confession providing evidence that would ensure none of them saw freedom for a long time. And Jim Wheeler had been arrested for conspiracy and providing information for a felony. 2 years minimum, the prosecutor said. Maybe more. I'd driven to UVA hospital at dawn, arrived too late to see Grandpa Henry one last time, but in time to sign papers, collect his belongings, make arrangements. The nurse had given me the letter he'd written, to be opened only after his death. I'd read it sitting in the hospital parking lot while Blaze pressed his head against my shoulder. Beth, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad, kiddo. 70 years is a good run, and the last 18 months with you were the best of them. I lied to you about the cancer timeline. I've known since March I only had months, not years. The doctors were clear. Treatment might buy time but wouldn't cure anything. I chose to spend my last months teaching you to survive without me instead of making you watch me die slowly. You're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and you're never alone as long as Blaze breathes. The trust fund unlocks in 3 weeks. $2.4 million from your parents' conservation work, life insurance, and the land value. Use it to continue what they started. Save the wolves, Beth. Make their deaths mean something. I'm proud of you. Your parents would be proud of you. Keep making us proud. All my love, Grandpa Henry. The money had come through on my 18th birthday, 2 weeks after his funeral. Not $180,000, not even close. $2.4 million in conservation funds, $500,000 in life insurance, and the cabin with its 200 acres appraised at $1.8 million. I was worth almost $5 million, and I'd never felt poorer in my life. I'm surviving, I told Sheriff Thompson. That's about all I can claim. That's more than most people manage after what you went through. He sipped his coffee. I came by to tell you about the sentencing hearings. All 3 are next week. Prosecutor wants to know if you'll be there. Will it matter if I show up or not? Might. Victim impact statements carry weight with judges. He paused. Jim's lawyer is asking for leniency. Says he's a 71-year-old veteran with no prior record, cooperated fully with investigators, deep remorse. He gave them my address, I said. Told them when I'd be alone. That's not cooperation. That's the crime itself. I know. Sheriff Thompson set down his mug. But the prosecutor thinks he'll get minimum sentence regardless. 2 years, possibly less, with good behavior. The question is whether you want to speak about what his betrayal cost you. I thought about Jim, about Thursday evenings drinking coffee on this porch, listening to his stories about Grandpa Henry's ranger days, about the casino debt that had made him desperate enough to sell out his neighbor, about the look on his face when he'd realized what he'd done. I'll think about it, I said. Sheriff Thompson nodded and stood. Tommy Blackwood pleads guilty to 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter, hit and run, obstruction of justice, home invasion, and about 6 other charges. Life sentence, no parole. Derek Collins is looking at 20 years minimum. Ray Sullivan cut a deal, 5 years for testimony against the others. Ray saved my life, I said quietly. He also broke into your home with a gun. The sheriff's expression was complicated. Sometimes people can be 2 things at once, criminal and hero, betrayer and savior. After he left, I walked the property with Blaze. The 200 acres my parents had turned into a red wolf sanctuary, now officially mine. The Morgan Wildlife Legacy, the lawyers had named it, educational programs, conservation research, and something my parents had never told me about. 4 more red wolves living in controlled territory deeper in the mountains. Blaze wasn't alone, had never been alone. My parents had bred a small pack, reintroducing the species 1 careful generation at a time. I'd found them 2 weeks after the break-in, following Blaze through territories I'd never explored. 4 wolves, 2 adults, 2 juveniles, living semi-wild on Morgan land. Blaze's actual family, the pack he'd been born into before hunters killed his mother and siblings. They accepted me because Blaze vouched for me. That's how wolf packs worked. Trust extended through bonds, through loyalty, through the kind of family you chose rather than the kind you were born into. Virginia Tech had offered me early admission to their wildlife biology program with a full scholarship. I'd start in January, 3 months away. They'd made special arrangements. I could bring Blaze, could do field research on the Morgan wolves, could build my thesis around the conservation work my parents had started. I'd said yes. Not because I was ready, not because the grief had faded or the trauma had healed, but because Grandpa Henry had been right. The work mattered. Making their deaths mean something mattered. Continuing what they'd started mattered more than my pain. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Ray Sullivan. I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I wanted you to know I'm in a treatment program for PTSD. Therapy 3 times a week. Working through the things I should have worked through 10 years ago. You showed me it's possible to survive the worst night of your life and still choose to be better. Thank you for that. I don't expect forgiveness, just wanted you to know I'm trying." I stared at the message for a long time. Ray, who'd helped invade my home, who'd recorded Tommy's confession, who'd called 911, who'd chosen redemption when he could have chosen escape. I typed back, "Keep doing the work. Become who you're meant to be." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. Recognition that people could change, could choose differently, could find their way back from darkness if they tried hard enough. Blaze nudged my hand with his nose. Time for the evening feeding of the pack. Time to check the trail cameras, analyze movement patterns, document the slow, careful work of bringing back a species humans had nearly destroyed. I walked toward the forest with my wolf beside me, my parents' research journals in my backpack, my grandfather's compass in my pocket, and something that felt almost like hope stirring in my chest. They'd tried to break me that night, Tommy, Derek, even Jim in his own way. They'd taken my money, my sense of safety, the last weeks I could have spent with Grandpa Henry. But they'd also shown me what I was made of. I was Robert and Jennifer Morgan's daughter, Henry Morgan's granddaughter, Blaze's pack leader. I was a survivor, and I was just getting started. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons about forgiveness. Beth's story reminds us that family isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, by showing up, by choosing each other even when the world falls apart. Her grandfather spent his final months not seeking pity, but building her strength for the battles he knew she'd face alone. That's the kind of love that echoes across generations. And Blaze? He showed what unconditional loyalty looks like when everything else fails. We've all faced moments when betrayal cut deep, when loss seemed unbearable, when we had to choose between bitterness and moving forward. Beth chose to survive, to honor those who loved her by continuing their work, by transforming her pain into purpose. Her parents died pursuing their passion. Her grandfather prepared her for independence through sacrifice. Even Ray found redemption by choosing truth over escape. The question isn't whether we'll face darkness, we all do. The question is what we build from the ashes. What legacy have you chosen to honor in your life? Have you ever had to forgive someone who betrayed your trust? And if so, what helped you move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.